I'm Susan Boyer, Senior Pastor of the Laverne Church of the Brethren, the home church of Chuck and Mille Davis. I welcome you on behalf of Chuck and Mille's family to this online memorial service to honor the life, love, and legacy of this beloved couple. Their family had so hoped to have this service in person, but in care for the safety of others, they've moved it to this online format, which actually widens the circle of those who can attend. Welcome. It isn't a usual thing that we have a memorial service for a couple, but it is surprising to no one who knew and loved Chuck and Mille that they would die just a few short months apart. They were married for 74 years. Their gifts and their interests were different in a way that complemented the other. Their faith and their faithfulness was solid as a rock, but not in an unchanging way, in a way that reached out beyond themselves. I am so grateful that we get to join together to remember them and honor their lives in this way. All of their children and grandchildren are going to be part of this service. This is a talented family, both through words and music. I pray that our time together will fill you with your own personal memories of Chuck and Mille. Our time of remembering and celebrating them is sacred time. May the act of remembering them inspire us for the days ahead.
My name is Alan Davis. I'm the oldest son of Chuck and Mille Davis. And one of the things I remember from childhood is how encouraging they were with the kids. Anytime we wanted to investigate some subject, they would make it happen. Whether we wanted to be a baseball player or collect stamps, learn to sew, remodel bicycles, do carpentry, play music, anything like that, they were very good with helping us along. Music was one area that we all got very interested in. And my mom, of course, could share her high technical and intuitive skills in music, helping us learn to sing and play. My dad had a vast knowledge of popular music from his childhood that he was able to point us in directions that he thought we should go, showing us things like T-Bone Walker, saying you should listen to the Ink Spots, Jimmy Noon and Earl Hines. In a pawn shop once, we went to pawn shops a lot, and he took me over and showed me a pedal steel guitar when I'd never heard of something like that, and kind of told me how it worked. So they were both really, really useful for a lot of areas that they helped us with. When Catherine and I were in early elementary school, we wanted to play piano, and my mom bought an early, a beginning piano book, and she started helping us go through it. After a few lessons, Catherine was doing fine and excited, but my mom came up to me one day and she said, "Alan, do you want to continue playing piano?" And I said, "No." Because it just dawned on me, I didn't have to do this. This is starting to be annoying. And so she said, "Okay, maybe you'd like to play some other instrument someday." And as it turned out, I did. So we'd like to share a waltz from the decade when my parents were born. Margaret is going to play with me, my wife, and our kids, Casey and Chelsea. So this is called Aite va de canto, something about going through life singing, and that's kind of sums up my mom. So here we go.
Greetings, I'm Casey Davis. Chuck and Millie were my grandparents, and they have been such an inspiration throughout my life in so many ways. When we were kids, Grandma would always save up the Sunday funnies in a basket in the family room for us to read when we'd visit, because she knew that her newspaper carried several strips that ours didn't, and now the history of comics is one of my favorite subjects to study. Grandma and Grandpa introduced me to some of my first games, dominoes, checkers, mealborn, and hearts at their little old card table, and now board games are one of my biggest hobbies. But I think one of the strongest influences on my life has been Grandpa's passion for all things mechanical, and his love for teaching others about how they work. He could happily talk for hours about gear ratios and pendulums and longitude and geometry and specialty slide rules and programming obsolete computers, which a lot of people might find boring, but I loved to listen and join in the conversation. One summer, Grandpa announced that he had been working with some unusual T-shaped pendulums and offered $100 to any of his grandkids who could figure out the physics of how they worked. I decided to make that my summer project, so I used the math and physics I had learned in college that year to puzzle it all out, wrote up a report, built some demonstration models out of coat hangers and coins, and walked over to his house to present my results. It was the first time I'd really gotten paid for doing math and physics, and led to a stronger connection with Grandpa by providing this big new thing we could talk about. Some years later, I was in the middle of my first year teaching on my own, and having a miserable time of it. I didn't fit in, I had no classroom management skills, every day was a grind. I felt like I should just give up on teaching and try something else. But then Grandpa sent me a long email about his own experiences teaching, and stories from his first year when he was also having a terrible time and felt like giving up, and what he did to get through that and find a better place to teach more in line with his skills and interests. That helped me so much, just knowing that I wasn't alone, that he had struggled with some of the same problems, that it can get better. So I kept going, found a better place to teach the next year, and an even better one a few years after that, and I'm still teaching there now, a decade later. Helping people learn about math and physics is one of my favorite things to do, and it's largely thanks to Grandpa's inspiration that I'm able to do that. I still keep one of his old clocks in working condition in my office, both as a reminder to myself and a continuing inspiration to any student who takes an interest in the gears.
So we're up here in the high country, and it's making me think of my mom and dad and how lucky I was as a kid to go on lots of camping trips and even hiking trips as a little girl, and then later as an adult, and still do. And I'm so grateful for my parents for that.
I wanted to say thank you to Grandma and Grandpa for taking me and Holly camping when we were kids. I remember going on the backcountry trip in Yosemite National Park with Grandpa, and we're hiking up here today in tribute to him. So thank you, Grandma and Grandpa. The last time I got to go and visit Grandma and Grandpa in Laverne was in December of 2019 for Christmas. My grandpa showed me how to make his caramel recipe, and he gave me his candy thermometer and his hand-carved spoon and his caramel pot. And he also showed me how he got his caramel pot down from the cupboard. Like this. And so I'm grateful that I got to see them one last time and make caramels with my grandpa, and now I'm the one making them for Christmas using his same pot and spoon and candy thermometer.
My name is Jesse Davis, and I have the privilege of being the third grandchild of Mille and Chuck Davis. And as I think back on my grandparents, I keep coming back to the idea that they're both lifelong learners and really creative people, although in sometimes very different ways, and that their different styles of creativity really complemented each other really well. For my grandpa, I think most people who knew him knew that he's a tinkerer and spent hours in his workshop creating and building and repairing things, everything from clocks to making new parts for Tinker Toys that broke, to making a walking stick holder for his electric cart that he would race through town. One thing I really appreciate is that he knew that not everything needs to look perfect, and that if it works, that's usually good enough. I love that I have a lot of his tools in my workshop, and that they're still repairing toys for my kids that they still get to use today. It wasn't until later in my life that I realized how creative of a person my grandma is. I think most people knew about her musical talents and creativity. I remember being amazed the first time I saw her name a note that someone played on a piano when her eyes were closed. And as her grandchild, I always appreciated her creativity with sweet treats coming from the kitchen. But as I grew into an adult, I really came to appreciate how she was constantly working to create social connections and to build community. She's always calling or writing somebody, checking in on what's going on in their life, and telling them about other people, creating connections between her family and friends. I think she was really social media before social media existed. And so that's what I try and do, and what I try to teach my kids. Learn to love learning so much that you never want to stop. And keep building to create a world that's open and loving to everybody. And know that it doesn't have to look perfect all the time, as long as it works.
Good afternoon. My name is Charlie, and I'm currently in the Redwoods of Santa Cruz, where I'm reminded of my time with my grandparents in Camp Myrtlewood, and how they used to teach first my parents and then later my brother and I to take advantage of enjoying nature. And now that it's fall, I'm also reminded of a time when I used to sit in class anxiously waiting for my grandmother to pick up my brother and I from elementary school and take us back to Hillcrest, which at that time during our childhood was basically a second home to us. More so, as we're getting towards the holiday season, I often find myself thinking of how much time we used to spend with them around Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. And although those days are no longer with us, I still often find myself telling stories about them, like my grandfather's time as a CEO. And although they're no longer with us, I'm incredibly thankful for the time that they gave us while they were here, and how active and energetic they were even into their 90s. And even though we miss them very much, I'm incredibly thankful for the memories that they gave us.
I'm Holly Johnson.
I'm George Tucker.
And this is Thea. They are with us still, in the struggles we choose for ourselves, in the ways we move forward in our life and bring our world forward with us. It is right to remember the names of those who gave us strength in this choice of living. It is right to name the power of hard lives well lived.
We share a history with those lives. We belong to the same motion.
They too were strengthened by what had gone before. They too were drawn on by the vision of what might come to be.
Those who lived before us, who struggled for justice and suffered injustice before us, have not melted into the dust and have not disappeared.
They are with us still. The lives they lived hold us steady.
Their words remind us and call us back to ourselves. Their courage and love evoke our own.
We, the living, carry them with us. We are their voices, their hands, and their hearts.
We take them with us, and with them choose the deeper path of living.
Today we remember them, who lend strength to our lives.
Will you join me in an open-eyed prayer? Gracious and loving God, we ask you to send your Spirit on our time together. We know that you are ever present. Be with us in our laughing and weeping, our mourning and celebrating, our music and our words, our silence and our chaos. Help us to know that life and death are not enemies. Help us to feel you as close as our own breathing, as present as our own heartbeat. We have gathered to celebrate the lives of Chuck and Mille Davis, but we also want to learn from their lives. We want to learn from the strength of their convictions. We want to learn to see people the way Mille did. We want to problem solve and encourage others the way that Chuck did. We want to carry on the rich legacy they leave us. Oh, holy God, we ask you to be present to Chuck and Millie's family. Surround them with your peace as they mourn the deaths and celebrate the lives of this incredible couple. May good memories swirl around them, and may community hold them. Give them a deep sense of your abiding love, a love which even death cannot stop. It comforts us all to know, O God, that Millie and Chuck have joined our great cloud of witnesses. May we live lives in which humility and courage are woven together with boldness and grace, that in our loving and being loved, we may somehow ignite our world with a compassion so fierce that peace reigns and justice is done with mercy, and all may live in love. This is our prayer, and we pray it in the spirit and example of Christ. Amen.
My life flows on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear the real, though far off hymn that hails the new creation. Above the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? When tyrants tremble, sing with me, and hear their death knell ringing. When friends rejoice, both far and near. How can I keep from singing? In prison cell, dungeon path, our thoughts to them are winging. When friends by shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing? What through the tempest loudly roars, I hear the truth is living. What through the darkness around me flows. Songs in the night give bed. No stone can shake my inmost heart. While to that rock I'm clinging. Since love is love, heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing?
Hi, I'm Gradle Davis. I'm Chuck and Millie's granddaughter-in-law, and I'd like to share some words with you today from the book of Micah, chapter 6, verse 8. What does the Lord require of you but to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God?
Charles Ernest Davis, Chuck, was born in Laverne, California, the third of 5 children. His sister, Virginia Stark, survives him. Mildred Straight, Millie, grew up in Pomona, the fourth of 6 children. She is survived by her brothers George Straight and David Straight. Chuck and Millie met at Laverne College. Chuck was a year older than Millie and the son of the college president. During freshman orientation, upperclassmen shared information about possible extracurricular activities these entering students could join. And that's how Chuck and Millie met. Chuck was editor of the school newspaper and worked on the school yearbook. He desperately wanted Millie to sign up to participate in these particular activities so that he could spend time with her. Chuck, as one of his children described it, pursued Millie madly. Chuck and Millie began to date and never dated anyone else. Thus, they began a lifelong partnership that swirled around their deep love for the world and all of its inhabitants. A relationship that revolved around the church, family, service, friendship, and their joy in a wide variety of interests. Chuck and Millie started dating during World War II. Chuck, a Brethren boy steeped in the words of the Sermon on the Mount, was a conscientious objector to war. He opted for an alternative to joining the military and spent 3 years in civilian public service, or CPS. He had several different placements during that time. He dug privies in Florida and was in a control group for a study of atypical pneumonia. But the most memorable time in CPS was his service at Camp Angel in Walport, Oregon, a Forest Service camp where the men fought fires and worked to reforest an area heavily logged during World War I and then devastated by forest fires. This camp was also known for the creative arts. It was described as a group of pacifists devoted to the arts. An active group of conscientious objector artists transferred to the camp. Men who were interested in literature, music, speech, crafts, visual and dramatic arts. Chuck wrote home for the Kelsey Press, once used by his father. He taught these other young men how to set type. They started to put out books. These are the years of destruction, they wrote. We offer against them the creative act. During his time at Walport, Chuck printed the work of several early beat poets. When Chuck returned from CPS, he and Millie were married. Chuck's time at Camp Angel informed his vocational choice. Chuck's career revolved around printing. He was a printer at the San Dimas Press, a foreman at the San Gabriel Valley Daily Tribune, and a printing teacher at Garfield High School, Los Angeles Trade College, and Los Angeles State College. When he retired, he purchased Windsor Graphics, a typesetting and graphic arts photography business, which he ran with his sons. Millie taught elementary school until her first child, Alan, was born. 2 children followed, Catherine and Robbie. Millie loved being a mother and played music at night to help her children fall asleep. Music was one of her gifts, and she filled the house with it and was instrumental in her children's love of music. Family was important to both Millie and Chuck, and that lived out in so many ways. Every summer, the family would take a summer vacation and be gone for 1 to 6 weeks. One summer, they drove all the way to Alaska in their station wagon, 7 people in a car. Chuck and Millie lavished the same love and connection on their beloved grandchildren. You heard from several of them today in this service, a testament to who Chuck and Millie were as parents and grandparents. Chuck and Millie's lives revolved around the city of Laverne, where they met, attended church, and where they spent time with their church friends and their college friends. They didn't go home at night and watch TV. They volunteered in the community. They had a wide variety of interests, and they encouraged each other and their children to pursue these passions. Chuck loved clocks. I remember visiting in their home. There were so many clocks on the walls that I had a hard time hearing and concentrating on what was being said to me. I asked Millie, "How do you think with all these clocks?" She said, "I don't even notice it anymore." We have a clock in the church office that was donated by Chuck. When it chimes the hour, I think of him and I smile with gratitude. After retirement, Chuck taught a clock repair class for 27 years through Pomona Adult School, and he led a Lenten interest group here at the church in which, when it was over, everyone had a working clock. Chuck also used his energy and his skills to help other individuals and organizations live into their passions or missions. He did that in Walport with beat poets. He did that with his clock class, or when he got Robbie a welding torch when he was just in middle school, or when he purchased Windsor Graphics and ran it with his sons. He did it here at the Laverne Church of the Brethren in so many ways. Like all the times he came into my office and said that he wanted us to think together about some particular event or issue happening in the church. Always thinking about how to make us be better, stronger, more faithful. Chuck didn't know a stranger. He would strike up a conversation with anyone, anywhere, and leave friends. Chuck had an inquisitive mind. He was a problem solver. If he wasn't figuring out a new way to dry persimmons, he was perfecting the art of making caramels or investigating historic ruins. He loved to hike and be outdoors. He did a 3-night hiking and camping trip in Yosemite with his college friends every year, as long as they all could walk. He loved to attend the family reunion in Oregon and stay in a tent, even when he was really too old to do that. Millie was just as active, making her community a better place. She gave so many volunteer hours to this church family. She began the Alternative Gift Fair, an event we still do on the first Sunday of November. She taught Sunday school, was a hymn leader, sang in the adult choir for over 50 years, directed the cherub choir along with Doris Frick, played in the recorder choir, was part of the shared ministries visitation team, was a contributing writer for the church newsletter, played a key role in the church's decision to help resettle Cambodian refugees, and invited so many of us to her home for a meal. Hospitality, welcome, music, care, these were all gifts she shared freely and easily. I always referred to Millie Davis as a one-woman deacon ministry. She went out of her way to make people feel welcome. It was never intrusive, always gracious and genuine. She found those on the margins, those who felt left out, and she welcomed them into the center. She reached out to those recovering from surgery or need to be noticed. She could feel other people's loneliness, and she responded. She must have spent quite a bit of money over the years on stationery and stamps. I have kept several of the cards she's written to me over the years, and I read through them recently, and I felt seen and loved all over again. With her beautiful penmanship, she would make sure that those in need of love and attention received it. The gifts she gave so freely here at the church were also shared in the community. She was a Girl Scout leader, co-directed the Choral Bells, a woman's choir, delivered Meals on Wheels, and more. There are simply too many to mention. Her ability to reach out and welcome was one of the reasons that the University of Laverne hired her to be their director of alumni relations, and then honored her as the alumni of the year in 1984. Millie loved to cook and bake cookies. She played sports as long as she was able. She especially loved tennis. She loved fresh flowers and watching the Lakers. But by far her greatest joy was visiting with people and spending time with family. She loved being with her sisters. Both Millie and Chuck were lifelong active peacemakers. I already shared with you about Chuck being a CO during World War II. That commitment continued. They were active in the Pomona Valley Peace and Justice group. Mille started a contest at the high school to create a book cover promoting peace. Chuck attended peace marches in Los Angeles with his own grandchildren. Chuck and Mille lived the good life. They loved each other deeply and wholly. They embraced and were embraced by a community in which they could raise a family and sink their hands into service. They did justice, loved kindness, and walked humbly, the good life that God requires of us. It never appeared to me that they felt overly burdened by this life of love and service. Every day was a day that the Lord had made, and they rejoiced in each other and in the day. Chuck spent the last days of his life at Woods Health Services. Because of COVID, Mille only got to visit him there twice. They celebrated their 74th wedding anniversary on a computer screen. As he was nearing the end, his daughter said to him, "Dad, you get to die today." And he responded in Chuck fashion with, "More work to do." His final word was, "Together." Mille went to Woods Health Services after Chuck's death, and I felt honored to get to visit her there. She was ready to die. I told her that I referred to her as a one-woman deacon ministry, and I thanked her for all the ways she had cared for all of us, including me. She responded just as we would expect Mille to respond. I consider it one of the great privileges of my life. I loved being of service. When she could no longer do for others, she was ready to go, to rest back into the arms of God. So often when we lose such spiritual giants among us, we focus on the huge hole that their passing leaves for us, their family, their friends, their church. They were so active, so present, so filled with gracious connection. I've had people in the church say to me, "We needed Mille to help us through this pandemic, to remember us when we were lonely and isolated." But that's not the message Mille would want you to take from her life, that we need Mille back. No, she would want you to pick up the mantle. This is our world, our chance to love, our sacred privilege to see those around us who are lonely or left out or in need of notice. Chuck, the man who died with thoughts of more work to do and gratitude for being together with his children, wouldn't want you to wish him back, but to live your life with equal passion, to follow your call, to give your time and attention to making this a better, more beautiful world. Chuck and Mille Davis leave us a lifetime legacy of continuing the work of Jesus peacefully, simply, together. Chuck and Mille were a beacon that pointed us towards justice, kindness, humility. Their lives weren't about the hole that they left behind, but the call to bear witness to their legacy and then step up to do our part in love and service and delight. Chuck and Mille Davis lived the good life with deep love and joyous energy. Maya Angelou says, "Just do right. Right might not be expedient, it may not be profitable, but it'll satisfy your soul." Chuck and Mille Davis left us with their souls full and a call for us to step up to also live soul-satisfying lives. Amen. Friends and family of Chuck and Mille Davis, pick up the mantle this couple hands to you. Do justice, love kindness, walk humbly with your God. And may it be well, so very well with your soul. Amen.